All right. Hello, I'm Heather.
And I'm Amy.
And this is Ever So Clever Conversations with Amy and Heather, the experienced empaths.
And
I
today we're
forgot where I was for a minute. So.
okay. We don't know who we are, what we're doing. So join us. Today is episode 18, and we're going to be talking about the creative side of the empath. You guys, Heather and I came together to create these conversations really to help highly sensitive and empathic people thrive in today's turbulent world. And so today we want to lead off with what about the creative side of the empath? Is it important? How does it work for us? How does it hold us back? What happens with that? So I'll let Heather dive in. Ooh.
Well, and I'm just looking at the artwork behind you because I know you are very creative and I think we all are in our own ways. So, and I think creativity gives us a way to self-express. And share emotions maybe that we can't verbalize always. So it gives us an outlet that way.
Absolutely. It's I would say too, something that comes to mind is we are all creative in many ways, but also intuition plays a role in there. That's a pattern keeping thing, and it's a creative process to figure out how that all goes together. And all of us have that ability. I mean, we all have that intuitive ability, but we also have abilities creatively that I don't think we even really give credit for. It could be you're in the kitchen and maybe not today, but we ran out of plastic bags or something. So then what are you going to do? You might wrap a sandwich in wax paper, or you might put it into an actual, plastic container. But those types of things we sometimes take for granted, that those are strategic, creative moments in our life. So I think creativity is really hard to extract from who we are. In the way of self-expression, I do think we're in a time where it is challenging. We're coming out with this voice to self-express more and more as these sensitive people. And that's new. I mean, this concept has only been around 20 or so years. And I know being an empath has been around longer and people are a little more aware of it in a broader way. But it still is something that is, I think we feel it's a weakness in a way where that expression of it is truly important. And sometimes for us, getting it out, like I know was at an event once, and we were drumming, and there were about 30 women in the room, and I was one of the facilitators, but the other facilitator was leading this, and she's like, why don't we break it up by emotion? And I said, well, I'm going to sit over here. And then it ended up, my space was the anger space. So there were 3 of us drumming really hard, and it felt so good. Who knew? But simple things like that can be, I think, a really nice way to appreciate that expression, appreciate that experience of the emotion, because we are highly emotional people, and I'm curious about that too. It's like women process 39 emotions and men tend to process 9. But with the highly sensitive, what is it, right? With the empathic people, maybe it's bigger. And in the work I've done, I mean, this is getting kind of off topic, but people who have bipolar disorder actually experience joy in a huge range, or they experience anger in a huge range. And that's a beautiful ability. But if it gets stuck, it becomes this metronome. So, what about all of that? What about expressing out and understanding those pieces of us? It's important.
Yeah. So if you're watching, or even if you watch later, how do you express your creativity? I know there's so many different ways. And I was thinking that, like, as children, I was thinking about how I expressed it. And it was funny to me because I hadn't thought about it in a long time. But I used to like create with my friends, like little plays and like dance routines. And I had to be the leader of and people that know me. I mean, I'm a pretty reserved, quiet person. So looking back, I was like, that is fun. And we made a haunted house in our basement. I had to be like the one that walked through people and told everyone what to do. And so that's interesting to me. And when I'm looking back now I liked to not control in a negative way, but like I could see how everything would come together.
Mhm.
And I think that's for us empaths and highly sensitive people. We can see sometimes things in we talk about the big picture.
Mhm.
So I think I could coordinate and bring things and bring people together, even as a kid in that way.
That's hysterical. I
Right?
can relate a lot to that, Heather. Truly.
Oh,
I think that yeah, those are pieces that identify kind of that empath, highly sensitive too, is good leaders, that, um, but also that need to create something that's fun for other people and invite them in. Um, I mean, in that, I think I identify, and maybe this isn't an empathic thing, but as wanting a sense of control over it. Like I have a certain design at, standard. And I know in my house, my husband is really open, but he's like, you know what, Amy, I really trust what your standards are, which is really helpful because he could be like, I hate how you design things, but so that's important. I think that we recognize that we might need creative control over some things too. And we want to lead it because we want it to have a certain feel and vibe, and don't shy away from that. I think that people that are sensitive tend to think, well, everybody should have a place and everybody should have a role, but not everybody wants to be that. And
right,
that's okay. Yeah.
right.
Now Heather and I spend time putting these things on as adults.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
That's true. Create our own show. But I know now I'm like, well, now I do things more reserved though, like writing and journaling and more quiet. And that's my way of expressing. And I think healing too, healing my emotions and my thoughts. So that's where I release be creative and release some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, something I've noticed for myself, and it kind of hit ahead when we were looking at this episode recently, and I thought, oh, I get it, is I need to be around more creative people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm around a lot of linear people, and I'm like, I have that in me too, and there's a need for that. But there's also this need for that creative inspiration and to feel like you can bounce things off of people or so on, because my creativity and writing is quite funny and bouncy. And it's like, if I can't get into that space, I can write without having that, but it doesn't come out as freely and naturally in that way that I think is really a pleasure to experience versus just information. Yeah.
So I think it's important too to make time for yourself to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
I think for those of us that are sensitive, we see things and we need that quiet time so maybe meditation or being out in nature. And maybe people don't take that time to be creative. And I think it's part of even self-care, because it's such an important way of how we express and release things.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Too, I have a strategy of I work in my office for calls and so on, but I notice if I work in my office for the regular things I have to do, like putting out emails or doing this, I don't get much done. But if I work at my dining room table, I get a lot more done. And now I have somebody who's offered me a space at a low cost to go and work. And I'm like, okay, I think I might talk to her about Wednesdays, going there and writing during the day, whether it's writing speeches or writing some of the other book work that I'm doing, that might be a nice way to be like, this is the time to do it. And if I end up, there's a lake close by, and I'm like, if I end up walking around the lake, that's not a problem. Like that's an okay thing to do, because we do tend to get ourselves, I think we're givers, so we give a lot and then we forget about what we really need, and that we need to nourish that piece too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And nourish that in our children. I mean, I see that. It's funny because I was just thinking of my daughter Ellie, who's 20. She used to love to do art and draw, and she kind of has stopped that. But her grandma bought her this paint by numbers, but it's for adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Cool.
super cool.
Oh.
So it's more, I mean, I remember it as a kid, like the little paint by numbers, but it's like this huge, beautiful, she got to pick what her design was.
Okay.
So it's something for her to be creative, and you don't have to follow like the coloring exactly. Like it numbers it and then it gives you the color to go with it. But So Ellie was like, I want to get an easel. And so now she's like all excited and motivated to share, be in that space. And which she hasn't been doing that creative stuff for a while. And I'm like, it's so fun to see her be excited about that. But yeah, if that's something that interests you, look for that in adult, like it's adult paint by numbers. I think they're kind of the new thing for a while was those adult coloring books.
Right.
Right. For yeah.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing these coloring things for adults. So, and
Cool.
so many of us are home. So it's
Right.
like finding these outlets are important to do.
They are. Even doing activities together. A friend of mine makes these little gnomes that she sends you like boiled wool, and you
Oh,
stitch them together, and you even stitch together the inner, it's kind of like a thick fabric, not a muslin, something else, it doesn't matter what it is. And you stitch it into a cone shape and then fill it with corn or beans and
oh,
stitch that up and then create the outer outfit and decorate these little guys. And she sends you fur for their beards. They're super
cute.
right. And so even, we started it last year, but then I don't remember what happened. We needed something that we didn't have. We never got back to it. So I'm like, we're going to do that pretty soon this year because it's snowy and 17 degrees. What?
Yeah, here where we are.
But I do think doing activities with your kids too can be a really fun way. Even silly stuff, like getting out making that flarp or Play-Doh, and around. Teenage kids, they love it. My family resurrected a dartboard from our garage that's been out there literally probably 16 years. And I purchased these parts that it needed and so on and new darts. And then it just sat out there still. So I brought it in the house and the kids and my husband and I have been having tournaments, I'm like playful things like that, just connecting to our fun. We kind of laugh with each other and let go. But who knew, they're like the perfect age for it too. And our kids had never played darts. So they're learning how to do that, but that creative fun.
Yeah. And like you said in the beginning, I was going to say this, that mom, because you were talking about the sandwich and not having a bag. And I think all moms are so unique and creative. We can just go with whatever we need to, like in the spare of the moment. So, and even being more of a sensitive person, I think we can think of things really quickly when we have to solve a problem or come up with a fun idea or, so we're really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A creative, way to solve. If your child's sad or if we forgot something or to fix a problem, it's like we have this quick way to do that.
I agree. Heather mentioned this book a while ago and I ordered it and I've been reading it, the Making Work for the Highly Sensitive Person. And one of the things in there that just really has stuck with me is that if a highly sensitive person a problem is put before them, they'll come up with 75 solutions for it. It's just like, boom, here's what we're going to do. And they're good, So I think that that's a strength that we have. And us using our creativity, another thing I want to point out is we might potentially be less linear logical and more non-time bound, more intuitive, more that range, because we are more in tune with those emotions versus this is how it works. So yes, you can be good at math, so on. Those are also patterns, but I think that there's something to take into account there for we may just be more creative. I mean, I think that's something that is said about highly sensitive people, empathic people is, by nature we are. So also, what do we do with that? How do we honor and respect that too? You might already be doing things that are creative and not realizing it.
True. Yeah.
And so part of it's like, for me, I knit and I was saying to a friend this morning, I get frustrated with myself when a knitting project breaks, like something goes wrong. And then either it has to go to knitting jail or it haunts me. Like, oh, I got to look at that and see and get it back on track. And then I can keep going. So there's also this peace of mind that I need to say, it's okay. Like, it's okay that it broke and it's going to be on hold for a while. And because I can't tend to be intense, like, okay, get that done and get this done. And it doesn't, letting go, but recognizing that's an important part of my life is knitting. I connect with a lot of women that way too. So find ways you connect. And I mean, that's another thing I said, I wrote in here that I think I didn't share, Heather, is we also, as these people, need other people, and being with creatives is really important. I think it is super important for us. So that's the way I'm with creatives, is to some degree, is this knitting group that I have. You know, we always are working on, like, somebody's working on something really different, or we work on whatever we want. So we're talking about, you know, colors and where to get the best yarn for that, and how does that stitch work, and
Right.
you know, yeah, and it's also good for our brains. So it can be something simple, or like the paint by number. It's an awesome example of how you can connect crocheting, needlepoint. All these things count.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I would love to hear what others do. I mean, there's so many ways to be creative. And I know we posted something in the Facebook page yesterday, and poetry was one mentioned by a couple people. So that was really interesting to see. But I thought maybe for our deeper conversation, Amy, we can talk about how creativity can be destructive as well when we break something down. And you were just talking about that with your knitting, that's what I wanted to bring up. So something about there's something creative about destructing things as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Bring that up. So Amy and I do deeper conversations. I'm just looking at our Facebook page. Do deeper conversations for our Patreon members. So if you're interested in that, we will put a link in here. And it's a low cost monthly fee to be a member. There's different options or different tiers. But we have deeper conversations that we share there. Yeah. Anything else you want to add on this topic?
I can't think of anything, Heather, but yeah, you know, thank you to the people who are our members there. We appreciate you.
And thank you for watching us here too. Yeah, it supports our writing.
And it supports our creativity. What? Which, you know, thank you for that, because I think, you know, that's a tricky thing for people sometimes, is how do we support that in ourselves? And, you know, that we're talking about that today. It's important.
Right. So next week we have, what did we have? It's around the
let me see if I have it right here.
Election. It's around the election.
Oh, it is. So election fears and the empath or highly sensitive person.
Yes.
So join us, because here it comes.
Yes. So even if you're not in the US, I know people are watching us from around the world and what's going to happen. And we'll talk about that and how to support you, and no matter what the outcome is.
Yeah.
And how to process that. So
join us, guys.
Yeah. See you next time. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care.